Okay, great. Um, Good afternoon to everyone. I'd like to call the Human Resource and Labor Relations Committee meeting to order. And Beth, would you please take the roll
Yes, trustee Flood,
here?
trustee Cates,
Here.
trustee Loring,
Here.
trustee McMahon,
Here.
trustee Rosen.
Here.
You're all set.
Thank you very much. And people could mute their mics when they're not speaking. I would appreciate that. Could I have a motion for the HRLR Committee of the Board of Trustees to go into executive session under the provision of 1 MRSA Section 4056A to discuss the evaluation of personnel and the consideration and discussion of appointments, evaluations, employment, and duties, and 1 MRSA Section 4056D to discuss planning for negotiations and communications with AFM, UPSA, EXIM, Police, PATFA, and Service and Maintenance Units? Could I have a motion?
So move. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Beth, could you take a roll call vote on that, please?
Yes, trustee Flood,
Yes.
trustee Cates,
Yes.
trustee Loring,
Yes.
trustee McMahon,
Yes.
trustee Rosen.
Yes.
The motion carries. I'll move you into executive session.
Thank you. Okay, welcome to the Human Resource Labor Relations Committee meeting, our public session, October 24th, 2026. It's about 2:00, and I wanted to welcome people to the meeting. We have several topics today. Most of them deal with labor relations and benefits, and also our work plan. Before we do that, I did just want to say welcome to Trustee Rosen and Trustee Cates for joining us, I think, for the first time in our committee meetings. And I want to thank everybody for attending from the staff, and would like to start with the first topic. It's a labor relations update, and I'll turn the meeting over to Vice Chancellor Carolyn Dorsey to start that.
Thank you. I would like to introduce Ryan Whitlock, who is a part of our labor relations team, along with Susan Cameron, who's joined us on the call, and they are supported by Amy Parker and the folks in the HR area. I've asked them today to give a brief update on where we're at with our current bargaining and what we might be looking for in the next few months. And then perhaps just a reminder that we'll be offering more at the September board meeting. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ryan.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you for the time today. So I do want to provide an update today on ongoing part-time faculty negotiations. So just as a refresher for this committee, the part-time faculty negotiations kicked off on May 14th. The contract expires on September 1st. So that is this coming Tuesday. This contract covers between 800 and 900 part-time faculty members. So originally we scheduled 9 dates with the part-time faculty union. Unfortunately, 2 of those had to be canceled. And so the 2 sides have been actively engaged in what I would describe as considerable conversation regarding its priorities, both the part-time faculty union's priorities and the university's priorities in the negotiations. And so the conversation has been productive. However, we do still have some gaps that remain between those proposals, and we are unlikely to be able to reach an agreement by the expiration on September 1st. However, we are scheduled to meet again this coming Thursday, and we do expect to continue to schedule additional meetings into September. We do think we're going to need at least 1 or 2 more sessions to continue those conversations. But overall, pleased with where we are in the process. We made some really nice progress last week, and we just have a few more gaps that need to be closed. So that's where we are in part-time faculty. Thinking about the upcoming September board meeting, we are prepared to provide some additional information in how we're thinking about pending negotiations with our 3 main education association unions. That includes our faculty union, AFM, as well as our professional staff union, UMSA, and our clerical union, or COLT, or AXM, as we refer to them. So in the September meeting, we are going to be highlighting the university's priorities for those upcoming negotiations and providing some additional information as to what our approach will be in those negotiations and those proposals, and how we're thinking about solving for each one of those. So just a little bit of a primer today for what we expect in September, but we do expect to provide additional information that will lay that out for this committee on September 27th. So that's what I had for an update for today. Any questions for me? Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. We had another topic that was fairly significant. We're obviously going through benefits changes, and we had a expert, Amy Parker, available today to talk about how that transition is going. And Carolyn, did you have any introductory remarks on this, or just turn it over to Amy?
I did not. You can turn it right over to Amy.
Okay. Amy, fire away. Thanks.
Okay. Are you seeing my screen? Okay. All right, thank you. This is an informational report on the 2026 Benefits Transition Survey. There isn't any action that's requested of the board today. So 5 months into the change to Anthem and Capital RX, we asked just over 6,200 employees how it landed, and 559 answered. So what we know from this is that the transition largely protected access to care, but it has not yet made the plan easy to use for some of our employees. On January 1st, we moved medical administration from Cigna to Anthem and prescription coverage from Cigna to Capital RX. Both of these changes came through competitive requests for proposals, and Anthem scored highest of 4 qualified bidders. And we think it's really important to highlight why this is important to all of us. We are self-insured. We pay employee claims directly. So how employees experience this plan is not only a budget question, but also a service question. We know that when employees delay care because they can't predict their cost, the system will later absorb that cost in claims. Again, we sent the survey to just over 6,200 employees, approximately 13% or 559 responded, and we had good response from all 9 business units, and that includes the university services, or what some folks call the system office. I do have one caution on the numbers. Several questions were asked of people that they applied to. So when I say 82% of prior authorization users struggled, the base is the 193 people who needed a prior authorization, not all 559 people who responded to the survey. And every slide names what that base was. So this is lived experience, it's not opinion. Of those answering, 97.5% had already used one or more of the benefits this year. What we found from our survey was that this was a mixed result. It wasn't a uniform one. This is the whole survey on one chart, and the shape of it is the finding. So at the top, nearly 73% kept their providers with no disruption. 2/3 felt they had adequate notice of the change, and 61% found our own benefits staff and the employee benefits staff center to be responsive. And at the bottom, what we discovered is that only 22% of those respondents said they can use the drug formulary effectively, and only 18% know how to escalate a problem that they cannot solve themselves. So overall, the satisfaction is about 41% and about 38% dissatisfied. And again, that's of the population that responded to the survey. So this is a mixed result, and I'm not going to call it anything else. The low scores really measure navigation and help. Overall, not a regret about changing carriers. So that's, to me, is a different problem and largely a fixable one. So I'll go over what went well first. We had 4 results that I think deserve to be called successes. As you remember, we were making this change during a very difficult negotiation between Northern Light Health and Anthem, which really impacted our launch and transition. But what we found is that the continuity largely held. Among employees who used a medical benefit, 73% had no provider disruption at all, and they commented they credited the Northern Light Health agreement directly in their comments. We know that the notice worked. 2/3 of folks felt adequately informed, and they oddly found an email from Human Resources was the most valued source by more than double than any other channel. So people do appreciate the emails and indicated that they were reading them. What I'm particularly proud of is that our own benefits staff are one of the strongest parts of this story. About 62% positive ratings of the benefits staff, with about 13.5% negative. And there were comments crediting the Employee Benefits Center staff for resolving what the carriers could not or did not. And 64% were positive on prescription access, with a meaningful group paying less than they did before, which was one of our hopes for the change in the prescription. So Where did employees struggle? This is really the harder half of the story. These problems, again, are concentrated among employees with complex or ongoing health needs, and they're pretty serious. So nearly 45% of individuals met unexpected out-of-pocket costs of $100 or more. And if we include the smaller amounts, then 61% met some unexpected cost. We do know what some of these issues were, and we have worked with the carriers to help resolve a significant number of them. And some of it was just some confusion about what was covered as preventive and what was not. And our plan is a little bit unusual in some of these ways, so we had to do some adjustments with the carriers. We know that prior authorization was the sharpest problem. Of 193 employees who needed a prior authorization, only 18% found it was a smooth process. So this means that we had committed to, if they had a prior authorization with Cigna, that would carry through to Anthem, and we did not realize that was as smooth as we had hoped. Another 41% called it very difficult or indicated that their claim was denied. And some reported going weeks without a medication that they had taken for years. And these situations obviously were escalated. To a note about escalation, only 18% know how to escalate an issue. And some areas that we found that this was most prevalent is in the area of mental health. We found that some of the therapists or counselors are still not credentialed. Their co-pays could be up several times over, and we found that some employees were cutting back on care. So while I know that mental health access is an issue across the state, we are just finding overall medical care is access to medical care is a challenge across the state. So obviously, mental health is an area where we are particularly attentive to, and so we are taking some steps, which I will speak to in a minute. So the message that we're leaving at this point is that some of our employees reduced or stopped care because of cost or access. And that's the finding that I personally take most seriously. So what did our employees ask for? We asked them what would help them most. And the answer honestly was not that complicated. They wanted regular email updates and a reference document that they can trust. And then they want a way to reach a real person. Only 41 of the respondents told us they already have all the support that they need. And one related gap that I think is probably critical to this entire story is that approximately 44% of our respondents, and again, I'm guessing there's an even larger population of those that did not respond, they either don't understand what it means that the system is self-insured, or they're not really sure what that means. I think the top two items are the least expensive items on the list for us to address, which I feel really good about, and the two that we control without any vendors' cooperation. So that's really the education and the communication. So this leads into what is our plan going forward. We had 9 recommended actions that came out of the survey. 4 are high priority because they address harm employees are experiencing right now. So the first one is that we are developing a 1-page escalation guide that covers billing disputes, prior authorization denials, and formulary exceptions. And that communication is scheduled for early September. You will hear me say a couple of things are happening in September, and that's really to make sure that our faculty are getting this information as they return as well. Secondly, we're doing a prior authorization review with both the medical and prescription vendors. And it's really, we're focusing on long established prescriptions, and that is currently in process. Third, we are working to close the mental health network gap. That's also in process, and we're now including our employee assistance program partner. So as an example, if you go to our employee assistance program partner, which is different, and you get a referral to a provider, we then want to make sure that that provider is in the Anthem network so that they can transition into care once they've exhausted their benefit with the employee assistance program. So the 2 things that employees ask for the most are already the first 2 actions on our list. So 3 things to watch. I'll leave you with the 3 measures rather than a summary. Things we are watching is whether the escalation gap closes. So it's about 18% today, and it tells you whether an employee can get help when the plan doesn't work. And again, we're really focusing on communication and education. Whether the cost surprises decline from 45% for cost of $100 or more. And I feel really confident in that just because there were some plan design challenges when we made the transition. And whether the pharmacy sentiment improves before open enrollment. So Capital RX at 32% is our weakest vendor rating and is going to require additional attention. And I think this is largely because there are different options. So there's a mail order option, there's a typical commercial access option. And I think faced with a lot of options, it can be really overwhelming for folks. So our plan is to really focus during open enrollment on communicating some of those benefits more clearly. So our hope is that even though we're not doing a transition again next year, that after annual enrollment and folks have been into their new plan year a couple of months, we will again survey with the questions that are relevant to employees, even though it's not a transition year. And that is all I have. Are there any questions? Trustee McMahon.
I know it's a small sample of, I think it was 189, but have we seen an increase in denial of prior authorization requests on the medical side? I know we had some problems with the pharmacy vendor, but have we seen an increase or a decrease?
We have seen an increase, and there is, we have been able to attribute it to some possible non-compliance with our plan design previously. So for example, we discovered that there were some people who had been approved for GLP-1s for weight loss, which was not allowable under our plan design. So those are things that we're working through currently.
Thank you, Amy. I had a question. When people contact Anthem or Capital RX, are they receiving contact with a person right away, or is part of the frustration that they can't reach people? I just didn't know what that's like when
They
you're calling.
They are receiving, they are contacting a person. My sense is that some of the challenges that, the training for the staff at the vendors, this is new to them, right? Our plan is new, it's complicated. And so there have been some challenges with the information that people have been getting, or perhaps the person that answers the phone isn't really sure, or maybe doesn't give the best information. And that's where we've had to have our benefits staff, participate in the escalation. I would anticipate that would diminish over time as well. Trustee Cates?
Thank you. I know the healthcare is not the most popular industry in the country. Do we have any idea, Amy, whether these results are consistent with other large employers, with other providers, or is this just sort of the way of the world at this point with healthcare? Do you have a sense of that?
I don't have a sense of that, only because this survey was really specific to a transition. And usually what we sort of compare is how satisfied people are with their benefits, which is a different story, if you will.
Right. Yes, thank you.
Yep. Overall, I can tell you that our employees are very happy with our benefits. That's something that comes back pretty consistently. It is a good, generous benefits package.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
And any other questions for Amy on that transition survey? Seeing none. Okay. We had one other topic. We were just going to discuss very, very quickly the work plan and let people know what it is we'll be working on in the rest of this year. Carolyn, I guess you were going to kick that off?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So as you are seeing in the other committees, we have been working. Oh, did you have your hand is still up, Trustee Cates? Did you have no, all set. We have been working on our work plan as a requirement of the board office. Each committee turns in a general plan or flow that we would expect to provide you with information throughout the course of the year. Our work plan we have been working on over the last year or two and building it out and really trying to think about what types of information that we're gathering or could be gathering would be most helpful to trustees so they can better understand the labor environment in which we work. Some of the types of things that we are working on because we are in a unionized environment. Also, when we're working with parties who some are unionized and some are not, so there are always challenges to finding the right balance there. So what we're trying to do is think, what can we provide you for reporting, or what are things that we are already pulling because we're reporting them federally or for the state that could be helpful for you to understand the environment that we work in, or in thinking about how best to place resources, or what initiatives we may need to consider that we have not thought about before based on changing demographics nationally in the workforce. So what we've tried to do is put together a nice mix of those things that we are required to do per policy. There are a few reports that we are required to give you each year, one being any changes, additions, deletions, or major changes to our management group. That's something that we, per policy, offer you twice a year. So we've put that in under certain times to spread it out throughout the calendar year. And then looking at things like the strategic plan reporting, those, again, expectations of the board, but also those reports like you just saw from Amy Parker that relate to something timely, which is the transition of our healthcare provider. So what we have attempted to do is prioritize the reports that will be most helpful in and around the time of year that it may be, again, because you're talking about moving into bargaining. In March, it might be related to budget and fiscal concerns. And in May, perhaps things that we're going to focus on over the summer months when school is not in session and we may have a bit more time to hold meetings at the system office. We have found that as we put things together, we have a pretty robust plan for this, for 4 of the 6 times that we meet. Our committee is positioned the same way that ASA and FFT is, in that we meet 6 times a year. We have found in the last year or so, we've brought that back a bit and only met 5 times a year because either over the summer or at the meeting in December, we just have not had enough of an agenda. The agenda's been very light, so we've moved it to a different time. So I think one conversation that we'll continue to have is, do we continue to plan to meet 6 times, or do we drop our regular schedule back to 5 or perhaps 4, like they do with the investment or the audit committee? Things that we'll talk about in this group as we go through the changes that we've added for the upcoming year. But as you can see from the work plan that's in your materials, I think most of what has been added are some really interesting pieces from HR that Amy has been working on for a while and continues to work on. One, we haven't talked about much before is our combined charitable appeal that the UMS employees participate in each year. We'll talk about the management group appointments, which again are required by policy. We also offer workforce profile and turnover reports, which I think gives us a good snapshot. One thing we've done over the last year or two, again, is not just offer our information, but compare that to what does that mean? Look at what our numbers are and what does that mean against our peers in the state, but also nationally. So if our retention rate is XYZ, how does that compare to our folks here in Maine and then across the country in higher education? So some really interesting information to be coming out in the next year. We have turned this in, but again, if there are any suggestions or comments that you'd like us to change. Also, we will likely be revamping it again after the October Strategic Planning Committee meeting, because a few of the areas that fell under the HR or Vice Chancellor for Strategic Initiatives area will be reviewed through the strategic plan review process, and we'll determine if those are still appropriate, accurate, or which ones we need to focus on more in the next year to keep on track with the goal. So we may have to, in a few months, look at this again and do a basic revision to be sure that it aligns with anything we're doing in the strategic plan. But aside from that, it's a pretty straightforward document based on some of those standing items and then the more timely ones that we'll bring to you from time to time.
those items are, they're listed on page 28 to 30 in the
Yes.
onboard materials. And it's somewhat similar to what we've done in the past, but it's been fleshed out a little bit differently. So thank you, Carolyn, for that, and Amy for that.
I
Any
think
questions?
I think my one ask around this is if there are pieces of information as you're here and you're listening to us report and you think of something that isn't a report that we've offered you, I'm sure that it is something that we can gather and report out on. So if there are pieces of information that you are interested in, or things that pop into your head that you think might be helpful, just let us know and we'll certainly add those to the reporting list.
Great. Thank you. I think that was the last item that we
Yes.
had on the agenda,
It was.
and that concludes our meeting unless there are other things that need to be brought up at this time. Chancellor Malloy has been with us most of the day. I didn't know if he had anything he'd like to add. It's always a pleasure to see you, Chancellor.
I do want to pay a compliment to Amy and to Carolyn on the getting from the one insurance company to another. It was quite a battle to land this and to get people on board, and they really did an exceptional job in all of that. And some of you were aware of that, and some of you might not have been aware of that. But the effort that went into making sure that people understood the transference and were able to talk about the goods and the bads. But we pulled it off. We were able to get Northern Light to work with us as well, and I just want to give them both a big shout out.
Thank you, Chancellor. I appreciate that, but we would be remiss in not saying that. Oftentimes, the Chancellor we'd be in 3 rooms with Amy on with one person, the Chancellor on with another person, me on with another person. And for all of those of you who know the Chancellor, he will come out of the room and follow up quickly and get right back onto that call again. So we had a wonderful incentive for Amy and I to keep those conversations going, because he was right there with us trying to make it get across the finish line. So that was very helpful.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. It is kind of difficult to recognize the fact that this is probably our last summer meeting of 2026. Kind of sad to say that, but thank you everyone for participating today. And there's no additional commentary. I'll declare the meeting adjourned.
Thank you.